to live coding with me, Rachel. Sleepy. Let me pull up my Twitch chat and make sure everything's good to go. How y'all doing this morning? It's morning for me. It's getting to be a little bit cold in Seattle. Today it is in the 40s, which is like around 4. The other one, centigrade. Yeah. Aha! I figured out how to get the chat back. And then just need to do this. Today, we are going to be continuing to upgrade our chatbot from feedback. Sorry. Good news, the audio is working. Today we're going to be continuing to upgrade our chatbot from Rasa 1.10.6, I think, to 2.0.0. Hello, Enrique. Good morning to you as well. So we have been working on a plan that I did not pull up. Sorry, everything today has just been moving a little bit slower than I would prefer for it to. So we've been working through a plan for our migration process. Right now, everything works with our new assistant, but we do have some things that I want to, I don't know about y'all, but I want to tidy up before we are good to go. So, okay, here's our update plan. I'll pull this up so we can look at it. And we developed this on stream, so you can go back and watch last Friday, I think, or maybe, no, it would have been last Wednesday because that was the webinar. I think last Friday we did this. Hi, Faiza, welcome. Good morning. So we created a new branch on Git. You can see we're here. Oh, no, you can't. I'm on it. That corner. There we go. We're in the branch Rasa 2 migration, which is a new branch. And I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to merge back to master today. So, and then we created a new Conda environment where we upgraded Rasa to Rasa 2 and all the dependencies. And we are still using Python 3.7.6. I should say there is, in theory, some people have had success with Rasa 2.0 and Python 3.8. We don't support Python 3.8 for Rasa 1.x, but that is sort of more rigorous support for 3.7 plus is on 3.7 is supported in 1. 3.8 plus is on the books for 2.0. So that's one reason to upgrade to 2.0 is if you are using Python 3.8 or above. Today I do have coffee, which is good because I need it. So some things that we need to do. The big one that I want to do today is I want to resolve the future warnings. So we're using forms, and right now forms are not defined in an action folder, if action file. Instead they are defined in the domain file. So this is what our form looks like after our migration that I did with some regexes. And the thing that we want to do next is we want to rewrite our stories a little bit. So we used the nope, it wasn't data. So we used the, I can get rid of this as well. This was just a copy paste of the methods that I used to write my form in the Python file. So we use the converter all over the place. We use the converter to convert our markdown file, stories.markdown, to stories converted.yaml. So YAML is the new format that we're using due to a lot of discussion and community requests. And the way that we're doing the action active loop here is going to be deprecated in Rasa 3.0. So I want to spend a little bit of time updating it. Bobby says, why am I wearing a coat? It's cold. It's, like I mentioned, it's 40 today in Seattle, which is about 4 centigrade. I'm becoming a lot more, hopefully better about communicating temperatures in both centigrade and Fahrenheit. I understand the benefits of the metric system. Fahrenheit is better, and I will die on this hill. Anyway, so for migration, and I believe last time we trained it, we got a future warning. So let me start by activating the Conda environment that we have Rasa 2 in. Activate, and I believe we called it fresh Rasa install _2. Hey, no scoped it. Fantastic. Okay. So then the thing I want to do now is we're just going to quickly Rasa train in here and see if we can get that future warning again. I think we will. Feza says, I want to know about the action ask slot name. We're not going to do it today. I'm going to tell you right now. I'm sorry. It's just not something that we need for this project. Winter started. It is still fall, but that is a very reasonable fall temperature, I will say. All right, so here we go. Future warning, using action deactivate form is deprecated. Please use action deactivate loop instead. So we are, here we have action deactivate loop. Let me see if I can find where the action deactivate form is. Action deactivate. Oh, was it the loop or the form that was deprecated? Form was deprecated. Deactivate form. Okay. Does it say what line it's in? 145? That's more than the number of lines that we have. Oh, you know what I bet it is? I bet it's using the old stories. So I'm gonna, this is a branch, so we can always go back to the main if we want it. I'm just gonna delete our markdown files. Peace out. Peace out, and then I'm gonna rename these. I think that's why we're getting that, that warning. And then I'm gonna rename these to nlu.yaml and stories.yaml. All right, let's see if we can retrain again and get better results. All right, the version key is missing in the training data file. Rasa open source will read that file as a version 2.0 file. All right, that's fantastic. I'm definitely okay with that. Just seeing other things. It's training, NLU data configuration didn't change, so that's not going to be updated. All right. And then we get a warning message. Why don't I just make this bigger? There we go. And then we get a warning message here. Following a rule-based policy in your pipeline, but no rule-based training data. Oh. Interesting. Please add rule-based stories to your training data or remove the rule-based rule policy from your pipeline. More information at rasadocs.com/rules. So we are using a form, which should in fact be rule-based, and it's the form that needed the rules. So that's why we included that as a policy. And I'm wondering if this is a warning message based on just looking for rules in the training data, which I would agree we don't have any, but we do have forms, and forms are rules. So it's like a set subset. Hyponymy. Yeah. Sorry, so a hyponym is a set of words where one is a subset of the things covered by the other word. So it's like pets, dogs. Dogs are a hyponym of pets. Pets are a hypernym of dogs because the class of pets includes everything in the class of dogs, and everything in the class of dogs is also in. There's feral dogs. This is not a great example. Canids, there we go. Because there are things that are canids that are not dogs. All right, so let's just really quickly run this through and see if we... Step one, let's actually start our action server. So we don't need the action server to so we don't actually need the action server to run the form anymore, but we are doing validation. And the other thing that our form is doing is it's running our machine learning model. The way that this project works is you're asked a bunch of questions about different ways that you would say something, and you answer just in plain text, and then behind the scenes we do some data validation to match it to one of a set of multiple choice answers, or if it doesn't match any of those answers particularly well, other. And then we run that through a machine learning algorithm, a trained model, k-nearest neighbors based on training data provided by BertVox. Thank you very much, Bert, as part of the Harvard Dialect Survey. And then we return those results to the user. So running the machine learning model and also the data validation both happen in our actions file, so we do need to run an action server. Oh wow, there's been a lot of chat. I have not been paying attention, sorry. Yeah, I'm not gonna talk about the action server. Teach us, even though I don't use it for project. I haven't used it before, so I'd have to like sit down and figure it out. Yeah, did you, I don't remember if I already asked this. Did you ask on the forums? You might have better luck there. Beza's from Ethiopia. We eat lots of things for breakfast, not oats. I eat oats for breakfast, but also my family's Scottish, which is, it's a very Scottish thing. Eat oats. And there's just like lots of discussion in the chat, and I'm happy to see it. All right, action server up. And we have all of the actions that I'm expecting to see, and let's pop into Rasa shell. Actually, my mother-in-law lived in Ethiopia when she was a child and has lots of fond memories of growing up. Not Addis Ababa. I've never been, but I would like to go at some point. It sounds really cool. And also, as you know, I love coffee, and Ethiopian coffee is just so good. It's so good. We're lucky enough to have a couple Ethiopian roasters here in Seattle. Boonboona is one. If you're in Seattle, I think they also ship really, really good coffee. All right, so I'm just running through the bot and making sure that it works and the whole thing works correctly. Yep. I guess I'm just going to type bug for everything, because if I just do A, it asks, that's interpreted as asking if it was a assistant, so it pauses the code and answers the question. There we go. All right. So I'm just randomly entering in some text just to go through the quiz really quick. But if you haven't seen it before, this is what the quiz looks like. And I think we're pretty much good to go. So while I'm doing this, let's pop this up and check it really quick. Yeah, so we resolved the future warnings, which is great. We need to update the requirements, which I believe I have. Oh, I don't. Okay. We need to write the requirements. Step 1. And then we're going to run a linter. And also we use black, which is just a, it's not just a linter, it also does like some more, I'd say it's like one level above a linter in that it will just sort of reformat things for you. Well, I guess a linter does that. I don't know. I guess for me, a linter more has suggestions than just like does it. Bobby says, your chief coffee officer. There's a fair number of people in Berlin who are also pretty into coffee. Berlin also has a pretty big coffee scene. Faisa says, happy from Ethiopia, call me when you're here. I will make you coffee at my house. That sounds like it would be lovely. I don't think it'll be in the next probably couple of years for sure. I'd also really like to go to Accra in Ghana. Just a lot of like cool history there, and there's also quite a lot of just really good NLP work going on in Africa, and it'd be great to learn some things. Also, in terms of like NLP problems, like Europe is kind of easy mode because European languages all tend to have like big written corpora that have already been put into databases, and also like the character encoding schema and the way that computers work are all built around the idea that you speak English, basically. So if you're trying to handle other languages, especially languages that are very distantly related, it's a lot more challenging. All right. Well, those are some, it says I'm from Virginia, which is true, but there's just sort of some random answers. Interesting. This is very much not results I would guess are Virginia, but all right. So it looks like it works. I'm just going to stop this. What were we going to do next? Update requirements. So I'm actually going to use Pyrex here, which will, not Pyrex like the glass dishes, Pyrex, Pyreqs, or Piprex? I forget which one I used last time, but they do the same thing. Robbie says, I love Africa too. Yeah, Africa's great. I wish, I don't know. I wish there was more awareness of not just solving, you know, the problems of rich white people who live in California in the tech community. It would make me personally much happier. And there are people who are working on it, but also sometimes I hear startup ideas and I'm like, okay, all right then. I'm glad you're solving, you know, a very narrow thing. I guess I also don't necessarily want like rich white folks to come in and be like, I can solve all of Africa's problems. What was I doing? Getting distracted again. Beza says, there's no Ethiopian language I've ever seen in NLP before. There is a fair amount of work on Amharic in NLP. So particularly the Black and AI workshop at NeurIPS last year before last. There were a number of papers on Amharic, and I will say I don't know every language spoken in Ethiopia, but there is definitely work on it. So I would check out the proceedings from that workshop in particular, and then like things that cite those papers and things that those papers cite. So there's definitely has been some work on it. Be great to see more though. Always great to see more. Upwork said, did you see my first comment? Last time I was this early, Rachel was communicating with birds. I did not. Thank you for checking in. Yeah, unfortunately we haven't had any more balcony birds. Coffee. Okay. I made a list. I wrote down a list because I know that I get requirements. That's right. I don't remember if I had this installed in this particular Conda environment, or the Conda environment that we forked. We did. Okay, fantastic. And then I think I can just do piprex. I think. And then it will put together a requirements file that is only things that have been used in my current directory. If it works. And I believe it usually takes a while, especially if it's a pretty large directory. So then there's that. And then the next thing we have to do is run our linter. All right, requirements have successfully been saved. If we pop that open, oh my gosh, there we go. Yeah, that looks great. Okay, joblib, fuzzy wuzzy. We're using this for fuzzy matching. Apparently this is a slur, so anyway, we'll work on, I don't know, I guess contact the author of the library, because I don't know of any other good fuzzy matching Python libraries. Pandas for things that you can do in R, but doing them in Python, basically. Samic is what we're using to run our servers. NumPy does numeric computing. Joblib is what we are using to serialize models, so take Python objects, store them in memory, and then reload them. Rasa, hopefully you know what Rasa is. If you're watching this, it's the framework we're using for the building our chatbot. The SDK is what lets us do the actions and interact with everything that's going on behind the scenes in Rasa with code. And then scikit-learn we're using to make predictions using our k-nearest neighbors model. Wowee. All right, so I think we're good to go. So I'm gonna do, it's actually been a while since I've ran Black. Do I have Black installed on this computer? Oh, let's see. Let me see if I can do a quick search. black. Just to zhuzh it up a little bit. Fisa says, will I be able to use Amharic in Rasa? That's a really good question. So it will depend on building the NLP pipeline to the point, yes, but you're going to need a tokenizer for Amharic, which you might be able to find. In fact, I would be surprised if you can't find one. And you will need, I did find black. Sorry, this is the black documentation. So you'll need a tokenizer for Amharic. You'll need probably pre-trained embeddings for Amharic, which I believe I have seen. So I think if you like poke around a little bit, you might be able to find those. Or you could train your own embeddings if you have a corpus of things that people are going to say that you want to be able to handle. So yes, you should be able to. It's going to be a little bit more, a couple extra steps just to make sure that everything is set up and works correctly for the language, because our sort of default is English. But yes, we are in theory language agnostic. And if you don't, there we go, it's just black. And then the, oh, okay. I don't have black installed in this this particular environment. Pip. Install black. So Rasa is language agnostic, so you should be able to use it with multiple languages. If you run into any issue, please let us know. You can file an issue on GitHub, or you can let us know in the forums. All right, now we should be able to run black in our current directory, and it'll go through and okay, so I only had a couple of Python files, so I just went through and updated those, and we are good to go there. Fantastic. What was our next step? And we're just powering through here. So Alt Shift 5. Now we got to run our tests, and we do have tests already written in here, so we should just be able to do Rasa test to run our tests, and those just make sure we've made a lot of changes. We want our conversations that we know the way that we want them to go. We want to make sure that they keep going that way. So I'll take just a second to run that. Bobby says, I used to get a dictionary when I saw your Kaggle stream. Sorry. I do try to be aware of sort of word frequency, I guess, like how often the things that I say are included in second language English curriculums, but I'm not always great about it. Is Rapid Fuzz faster than Fuzzy Wuzzy? I don't know. Okay, so let's check it out. So we don't have the Qt thing. There's just like a Windows dependency. I don't know if it's solvable. I have not spent that much time fixing it, I'm gonna be honest. And so we have two stories, and we got one of them right, which I think is honestly where we were before. We could use a little bit of work on our tests. Storyreport.json is here. So this is all of the sort of things that our assistant should be able to do. So we're correctly getting the deny, utter slot values. Interesting. So this looks like this isn't actually happening, even though when we did like a manual test, it was working. So interesting. Utter no worries. This is just like if you say thank you, the bot's like, no worries. Start quiz, that's good, thank you. Affirm, elicitation form. This is very important. It is correctly launching the elicitation form every time. Greeting, inform. This is also important because this is what we need to, the slots that you fill during taking the quiz, we need to correctly detect that that is the inform intent. For utter dialect value, this is going to be 0 because it relies on an action server, and the tests that you run in Rasa test do not also use the action server. So they're self-contained, just Rasa open source. Listen, doing good. So overall, I would say we are doing real good. So F1 of 94 for micro, 81 for macro, pretty solid, and the weighted average of 89. I am very happy with this. So this is a machine learning project, which means that there's a stochastic, a random element to it. So it would be surprising if we always got, you know, an F1 of 1 every time, especially because we've been retraining the model a lot. And if you don't set a random seed, you're going to get a slightly different model every time, even if you retrain with the same data. So I am not upset about this at all. All right, back to our list. What time is it? We've only been going for half an hour, y'all. And we're ready to merge. All right. First we should push, huh? sorry, first we should commit. So git commit all updated, and then we're gonna add everything. Oh, it's replacing the line endings. That's because I'm working on Windows. That should be fine. And I believe we can't push. Yeah, there's nothing upstream. Okay. So this is a new branch. So what I'm thinking about is, I don't think this is connected to GitHub right now because I've just been using Git locally for my file, my version management. So what I might do is I might just use the GitHub interface after the stream to do the full update on the public version of this, because I'm open sourcing this project. Because the way I have my GitHub set up on my on this Windows computer is a little bit funky. I gotta use like some desktop apps. I gotta like do some putzing. So I think I'm just gonna leave this for now. And what I'm gonna do actually is I'm gonna look into the thing that Faiza keeps asking for because I am listening. And we're done. Migration done. So that took what? We did one session of planning and like reading the docs and learning. And then we did, I think, one session of just migrating the project and then remembering that you need to train before you run. And then one session of migrating the forms and then like a half session of cleanup. So that was what, 3.5 hours total for the migration, including me chit-chatting about random stuff. So not bad, I would say. B Small says, I'm a noob, can you teach me something? Well, how about how to start a new Rasa project? So questions. Yeah, I don't know about Rapid Fuzz, but I will look into it. Actually, let myself little note, because I am running the fuzzy matching after every answer that somebody puts in, which means that a little bit of a latency win would be great, especially once I start serving this more widely and lots of people are using it. Faisa says, so if I feed lots of corpus of what people might say into the NLU data, that means with supervised embedding pipelines, I can be able to handle those languages. Is that what you mean? Yeah, I haven't actually done the supervised embeddings from scratch. There may be an additional step that I haven't worked with previously. But yes, you need to train your embeddings. How to work with number options in Rasa 2.0. Has anything changed from version 1.x? So like, if someone's like, say, press 1 for da-da-da-da-da, that sort of thing. Yes, so the way that you would handle those now, which would be hopefully a little bit more streamlined, is with rules. So rules are one of the biggest differences between Rasa 1.x and Rasa 2.0. And if you have any sort of like conditional logic that you need to do, and like if the output from this intent, from this utterance is the intent, you know, number, and the number is 1, then do this. So that sort of like structured way of doing things, including for things like fallback policies, are all together under rules now. So that is, I would say, the biggest difference between 1.x and 2.0, and should be a lot simpler to work with. So handling that case where it's like, pick a number should be much, much more straightforward. And the documentation for that is Rasa docs. rules. The documentation for that is rasa.com/doc/rasa/rules, and goes into a lot more detail and depth about how this works. And let me see if I can find a conditional one. Here we go. So here's a conditional rule where if there is a slot that's user provided name and that's been set, there's any information in there, then you should agree. So that sort of thing. Yeah. And yeah, it sounds like that's exactly what Json? I'm sorry, I don't know how to say your name. It sounds like that it's exactly what you're looking for, and I would do those with rules. Shiraj says, can you please help in understanding slot value validation? That's what I'm facing issues with. And then Shazan says, an example with forms. So I think actually, let's take a little bit of a deeper peek at this assistant, and then I am going to, well, we'll be in the action file. So I promised Faiza I would talk about the actions thing, so we are going to do that. I'm going to have to look up what it is first. So if you could like paste the thing in the URL of the forum post or the documentation that you were looking at, Faiza, that would be very helpful. What am I looking for? Actions, right. So the way that I'm doing validation, which is also how you would do more complex logic than just I want to say this next, is in an actions.py file. So to run this, I have a server running that is serving this oh, okay, this is just a warning about version differences. So to serve this, I have a server, a SANIC server that is running, that is serving this code, the actions.py code. And what I'm doing in here is a couple of things, but the one that's most, I think, important is I'm validating the information. So the way that I'm doing that is I have this form called, this action called validate elicitation form. And we wrote this together last stream, so you can go back and watch that. And then I have a database that I've created. So here we have, oh, and you can see that some spaces have been added by black so that I don't go over the PEP. Whichever PEP it is that tells you how many characters per line you can have rules. So for each of my questions, I have a set of multiple choice answers. So for this one is, do you say caught and caught the same or differently? So my options are different, the same, or other, something else that somebody says. So people can put any information they want into it, and I'm going to match it to one of these slots using, as you can see, I have one of these for every slot that I'm using, and I'm just writing these right in my Python file. If you had like a much larger database, I would probably have that in a separate database and read in the data as you needed it to do your data validation. Also, if this were user information, you should not store it in plain text in your Python file for security. So I'm doing this a little bit funkily, but basically for every slot that you want to validate while you're doing a form, you need to create a function, and the function has to have the name something like validate and then slot name. And what I'm doing here is I am generating these dynamically at runtime. So I'm creating all these functions using this sort of template generator function. I don't know what it's called. It's metaprogramming. I'm a computer scientist. I'm not. But it does work. So, and what we're doing is we are, there's this function that creates functions, and it takes in text from somewhere. I don't know where the value text is coming from, but the dispatcher is how it's going to send information back and forth to the Rasa tracker store. Woof. And then the tracker is the information about all of the things that have happened in the conversation so far. And then this is just sort of the dictionary that I'm using. And I'm going to go through and create this. Can I? Nope. And I'm going to run all this logic. So for each of my slots, I am checking if the value that is input, so this is what the user is sending me as text, I'm going to convert that to lowercase because all of my database entries are in lowercase, and if it's the same as something in my database, I just return that. Otherwise, I'm going to do fuzzy matching, and if there's an edit distance of less than 45 characters to any of the entries in my database, 45 is just set here, then I'm going to return the closest answer, and if it's more than 45 edits, then I'm going to set the slot to other, and as you can see, all of these have a slot other that I've added, and then I just return whatever the value is. So the value is going to be the exact thing that they sent me if that was in the database. It's going to be other if the thing that they input is very far from anything else available in the database, or it's going to be the answer that is closest with an edit value of less than 45. And then this whole thing is actually creating the function that does all of this. So it's the create validation function is returning the validate slot that has the name of the slot as an argument, and then I just create a new one for every single slot name. Is this the fastest and best way to do it? I don't know. It works. I got a lot of slots and I didn't want to write a lot of functions. And also that doesn't seem very dry. Dry stands for don't repeat yourself. So that's how I'm doing it here. I would say that this is a fairly heavyweight way of doing this because my k-nearest neighbors model expects a very specific set of input features, and the input features expect that you're going to have for the shoes slot one of these answers and no other answers. But for a name, for example, you probably wouldn't actually need to do all this. You could probably just store whatever text somebody put in as their name, because names can be very different, right? So I don't know. I hope that answers your question about adding additional logic and getting a little bit fancy. And this is specifically the way that you would do it for a form, but you could also do it for, you know, other things that you needed to do. And then this will be called every time somebody does enter something in the form, their answer will be validated and then returned as one of those three values. That was very long-winded. I hope it helped. Slot value validation and an example with forms. Yes, I think I answered the question. Ow, sorry, I hit my desk drawer. Probably was not good to listen to either. So let's answer Faiza's question and then just really quickly start a new project. Actually, I can show you the command to start a new project. So the framework that we're working with here is called Rasa, R-A-S-A. And if you want to start a new Rasa project, you would install Rasa, and there's some YouTube videos about how to do that. We might need to redo them for 2.0 though. I've been seeing more dependency issues with people installing 2.0 in Python 3.8. But the way that you start a new Rasa project, once it's installed, is you use the command RASAINIT in an empty directory in your command line. So here I'm using PowerShell in VS Code. You could use a terminal, any sort of command line you like, and run that, and it'll step you through the process of creating a new chatbot. And by default, the initial chatbot is just going to be, it'll ask you how you're feeling, and if you're sad, it'll show you a picture of a baby tiger, and if you're happy, it'll be like, good job. So that's how you'd get started. All right. Ravi says, I'm talking fast. Yeah, I had coffee. I've been trying tea for the last couple times, and it's, nah, I need the coffee. I feel great. Let me scroll up. So the question that Faiza had was about actions fill, so the action ask slot name. So I'm just going to see if I can find that in the Rasa docs. Let's pop this open. Action, other slot methods into action. That's the custom action. What was it? Action asks slot name. All right, so let's pop that open. And Control K is the command shortcut for opening the search window, which is what I did. So what are we doing? So this is from, okay, so it's another thing you can do with forms, using a custom action to ask for the next slot. So right now we are using the sort of the default way of doing the form, which means that, so form is just a way to collect a lot of pieces of information you want to store at once. For us, it's a quiz, so it's getting all the answers to the quiz. And in our, there it is, in the domain file. I don't know why that was so hard to find. We are saying, hey, these are our forms. We only have one form. It's called a elicitation form. And I want it to fill all of these slots. These slots are defined further up in the domain file. So here you can see I have entities, and it's just a list of entities. And then I have slots, and it's just a list of things that I want to keep track of over the course of a conversation. And these answers are going to come just from the raw text that the user inputs, and then we do the validation using our action. And the intent that the user says has to be in form. So they have to, our assistant has to think, oh, you're telling me something, and not, I want to stop the conversation, or oh, what's the weather like where you are? Just sort of chit chat. So making sure that if the user does something different, the conversation will change. So I can actually give you a quick example of why that's important. Let's see, so I'm just going to do Rasa shell. So this is a command that will do nothing because a shell has two L's. This starts a conversation with the assistant right in your shell, your terminal, your command line, all roughly the same thing. So if I start the quiz, and this is an English language model that we're using for the spacey components that we're using. So that's why that gets loaded every time. And if you were using another language like Amharic, with spacey, you would need like an Amharic spacey model. So I'm going to say, yes, I'd like to take a quiz. And then once the quiz starts, I'm going to say, hey, are you a bot? So I'm not going to answer the question. I'm going to change what's happening. And the assistant interrupts the form and says, yeah, I'm a bot. Do you want to continue the quiz? And then I'm actually just going to be like, no, I hate quizzes. I only want a quiz if it's a human. And then the bot says bye. So that's why you would say, I only want some intents to be allowed here. So that's the idea there. And that's the way that we're doing it here. And there's another way of doing this. As soon as the form determines which slot has to be filled next by the user, it will execute the action utter ask form name slot name or utter ask slot name to ask the user to provide the necessary information. So I have written a bunch of actions here: utter ask bug, utter ask second person plural, utter ask here, utter ask rain sun, utter ask crawfish. This one is not asking about a slot. This one is asking if you want to continue the conversation. And then I've written the questions. So those are under actions. And then under responses, I have written the questions. So utter ask crawfish, what do you call the miniature lobster found in lakes and streams? So that when the form's like, okay, now we need to find about the crayfish slot, I'm going to ask this question that the developer has written to the user. So that's the way it's sort of working now. So we're just writing YAML, which is just a plain text markup language that says what needs to be said. And then the assistant is deciding the order to do those things based on how we've defined the form and also our stories, which I don't want to get super into now because it doesn't look like it's super helpful. So here, if a regular utterance is not enough, so if we don't want to use these little samples that I've used here, utter ask crawfish, if a regular utterance is not enough, you can use the custom action ask form name slot name or action ask slot name to ask for the next slot. Okay, so what they're saying here is by default, it's going to first look for these utterances that are just plain text. If you want to say, include the user's name in every one of these questions, if they've provided it, or you wanted to do something like a little bit fancier, you can create a new action. So to do that, I would start just by like copying and then editing this code. into the actions.py file. The actions.py file could be in here with your config and domain and endpoints, or it can be in a folder called actions, which is where I've put it, because as you can see, I have a bunch of stuff in here that I need to do my prediction. So I'm going to actually use in here. So imagine that this is a Python file. It's not, it's just a text file, which is why you're not seeing any syntax highlighting. So these are the things that you need to import in order to do this action, in order to write a question that's going to be a little bit fancier. And then for here, ask for slot action. So this is going to be what you call the action. Okay, so the thing that Rasa cares about is what it's called, the name of the this thing name here. So this is where you would call this action underscore ask underscore and then the slot name, or if you have multiple forms, action underscore ask underscore the form name. So for us, this would be elicitation form underscore slot name. So something like crawfish. I wonder if this is supposed to be 2 underscores. I think it's not. I think this is supposed to maybe only be 1 underscore, possibly. I'm not sure. I would try it with 1 underscore and see if that worked. No, I tried the doc version first. I'd start with 2 underscores and then see if that worked, and if it didn't, remove the 2nd underscore. I lost it. Where are we at? There we go. Okay. So you would change this to be the name of the slot, and then this function run here. First of all, you will need to do these things like self dispatcher, collecting dispatcher, tracker, domain dict, just like we did with the validation, because that tells your function where to find all the information it needs to collect the slot name and do all of that. And then here, so in this example, it is just going to say what the message should be. So what space cuisine, and then it returns with empty, right? Okay, so it doesn't need to return anything, because what we're doing here is we are sending this utterance to the dispatcher, and the dispatcher is sending that to the user. So we don't need to return the text or anything. But what you could do here is, add additional Python logic. And I don't think this really makes sense for R4, because we sort of have like the simple use case for asking the questions, where we just have like text that we need to ask. But getting the data and then validating it is a little bit fancier for us, because we want to be able to take in any input and then match it to the closest answer. Hopefully that helps. Yeah. So that's where all of these bits will go, and what you need to change and what you shouldn't change, which isn't always, I think, especially if you haven't worked with Python a lot, not always super like obvious what can change and what can't change. Let me scroll all the way back down. And Mika says, using rules, I've noticed some issues with action underscore listen and next action prediction. I need to test more. Ooh, yeah, if you would file GitHub issues for those would be fantastic. Yeah, it would be really, really great if we could know about that, especially if it's with 2.0, because we want to make sure that it worked good. Shiraj Bot says, how are rules different from stories? So stories are training data for your policies, right? So if one of your policies is the memoization policy, which it should be, if someone is exactly following the format of the story, they'll continue to follow the format of the story. But the stories are also used for the TED policy or whatever other policy you're using that's much more flexible. So it shows a likely path, but as far as Rasa is concerned, it doesn't show the only path. And so for the example that I just showed, here, this is not a example that I created in my stories, I don't think. This is just me sort of trying different things with my assistant, and it can still handle it pretty gracefully, right? So the difference between stories and rules is that stories are suggestions, and if people are following them exactly, great. And if they go off script, then the assistant can sort of continue to work with them. Rules have to go the way that they're going, right? So for, let me pull up a rule. So for this to happen, So in order for the assistant to say, this is actually something we've had some questions about, and I'm really zoomed in, which is why this is it. So for the conversation start, if the user says a greeting, then the assistant will always say a greeting back, right? So rules have to happen in a specific order. In general, we recommend stories over rules just because they are more flexible, but sometimes you do really, really need to make sure, like, if X and Y, then Z. So rules are not as flexible. In general, we recommend only using rules when you really need them. The other thing that's different between rules and stories is you can do more conditional logic in rules. So you can check multiple conditions to be true before you do something else. Rules can be just like 2 turns of a conversation. They don't have to be a full conversation beginning to end. Neither do stories, but you probably want at least a couple stories that are just like end to end. Here's what I expect the whole conversation to be like. And also lots of things that didn't used to be under rules are now under rules. So fallback. So if you're not entirely sure what to do next, you can define rules to be like, hey, if I know what they said, but I'm not sure what to say next, here's what you would do. Hey, I know what to say next, I think, but I'm not entirely sure like what their entity was. Like I didn't correctly extract like their name. Here's what I do here. So you have a lot more sort of fine-grained control. Hopefully that answers your question. Lambert says, in Rasa 1.x, when we call a form, we can do tracker get slot name when we return particular slots. How to do that in Rasa 2.0? Same way. So if you need to do it if you want to create an action folder, as long as you have the the tracker imported from the Rasa SDK, you can still use it. So I should be able to. First, if I spell tracker correctly, you should be able to see that I'm using it in here somewhere. All right, buddy, where are you using tracker? I know you're using it somewhere else. There we go. Yeah, so I'm still using tracker get slot. I'm using Rasa 2.0 and I think I'm 1 subversion behind in the SDK. I'm actually using 2.0.2 for Rasa. Lambert says, like, the definition of required slot in Rasa 1.x. Yes, so I believe that is going to be in your domain. So I believe that is now going to be a type under slot. And we can double check that, but I'm like 80% sure that that's the case. But let me check the docs real quick. Required slot. Hi Kite says, non-related question here. What are you using more in your work? Jupyter Notebook or some IDE? So these days I'm mostly developing assistants, as you can see, and mostly I use VS Code for that. Actually, yeah, both on Mac or Windows. If I am doing data science work, so I'm doing like data cleaning or manipulation. Also, it is a Rasa Core Actions 2.x. Okay, yeah, so it is going to be in a mappings for slot static method. Okay, so you can also have a an action if you would like to say what slots are required. It feels like there should be an easier way to do that as well, though. But you can still do that in a Python file, in a Python action. Yeah, I also use RStudio a lot for data cleaning stuff. Rashmi says, forms has slot mappings from intent and from trigger intent. Can you please help me understand that? I don't know what from trigger intent is. Let me look it up. Nope, that's not gonna work. Control K. Nope, that's not it either. There we go. First V in the window. From trigger intent, you said? So, from underscore intent, I am using in this particular assistant, and that just means that sorry, I am not. I'm using from text, which means that it is the just the raw text that somebody puts in. Let's see. I haven't used the from trigger intent thing to fill a slot based on the intent that activated the form. Oh, gotcha. Okay. So this is going to be the name of the intent, I believe. That will fill slot name with value, my value, if the user intent is intent name or not. Gotcha. Okay. So it's saying that it will only fill the slot if the intent is the one that you say it is. And the from trigger intent is for the very first thing the form asks for. So for here, it will only fill this slot if the intent is intent underscore name. You probably want to, you know, say like the actual name of your intent. And it won't in particular if the name is excluded underscore intent. But I think this should work. Yeah, this looks a little bit redundant to me. Will not apply if the intent of your message. With the intent name, note that you can also define lists of intent for the parameter intent and not intent. Okay, yeah, so it just says, hey, I want to make sure that you are filling this if the intent is what it is like on my list of included intents. From text, intent name, from intent. Value my value if the user intended. Not everyone will apply. Yeah, okay, so you'd probably use either intent or not intent here, would be my guess. I don't think you'd usually use them together. I don't know, maybe you can come up with an example where you would. I don't think I've used these, so this is me guessing a little bit based on the docs. Ian Coombe says, how do you conditionally ask for a slot? So if this is in a form, I would do the, I'd probably write a custom action for that. If it is just in a, just in your regular, like going through your assistant, I would use a rule with a condition. So like here. So the condition here, the slot was set, and then the slot could be exercises and then false. And if that happens, then you'd ask more information. Oh, okay. So for this one, I'd say if the exercise is true, then also ask them what exercises they do. Enrique says, not super cool Rasa documentation in order to understand the concepts. I would say if there's a place in the docs that you, it's hard to tell if you're like, oh no, the docs, they're great. Or if you're like, I don't know. But if you run into a place in the docs that is a little bit confusing, please file a GitHub issue. Or if you want to make a pull request and just like, hey, I'd rewrite this a little bit, I would encourage you to do that. Also, if you're not familiar, our contributor program, so Rasa is open source, and if you make contributions to Rasa, so code contributions or things like updating the docs for something that's a little bit confusing, you get cool swag, and there's there's other cool things that happen as well. So I would encourage you, if you're ever like, hey, I wish this was different, at the very least to like file an issue and be like, hey, I wish this was different. We would really appreciate it. Ashi says, kind of get it. More examples in the docs would be helpful. Thanks. Glad I could help. All right. Let me check the time. It is 10 exactly. We finished what we were planning on doing like a while ago. I will do this offline, and then we'll be done. We'll be all the way updated to 2.0. I don't know what we'll do next. Something. We'll do something. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, that's just me thinking about different possibilities. So I'm really enjoying working on this project, but we have been working on it since January, about 10 months now. And I think it's at a state now where I'm kind of happy with where it is at the moment. So I might just, I don't know, it might be kind of cool to work on other small projects that answer specific questions that people have. Like I know that there have been some requests to talk about how an assistant could answer emails. And there's a lot of sort of like, I've got a big list of integrations and different tutorials I'd like to do. And I think that, I mean, it's more efficient for me if the thing that I'm doing for a tutorial, I am also figuring out on the stream, because then I'm not working on multiple projects at the same time. So we may be done with dialect for a bot for a while, but we'll see. I'm gonna think about it. But definitely there'll be something on Wednesday at this time slot. Monday we should have a new NLP for developers coming out. Breakout Bot Series 3 is continuing to launch. If you haven't watched it, Vincent, who has been in the reading group with me a couple of times and does the Algorithm Whiteboard series, is building like a text-based adventure game, and he's going through his development process and talking about all the different things he tried and like sort of different tips and tricks. And you could just start with season 3. You don't have to start with season 1, so I'd recommend checking that out. Podcast just went up. What else has happened? These streams. Next one's gonna be on Wednesday. It's gonna be an NLP for developers on Monday, assuming I finish it today. And yeah, that's what we got on the YouTube channel for the next little bit. So thanks for joining me today, everybody. I hope this was helpful. Very quick and easy. I will say the migration process was a lot easier than I thought it would be. So I was full of fear and it was unjustified, which I'm very happy about. So I will see you all next Wednesday. Have a great weekend. Stay healthy, stay warm if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, and I will talk to y'all later.